Leadership Mentoring Case Study for a FTSE 100 Bank in the United Kingdom by Mo Nawaz. Leadership mentoring is an increasingly prevalent focus in today's organizations around the world. In the past 15 years, we have all seen numerous articles, online and offline, in journals, in books, and in research documents relating to the practice and the effectiveness of mentoring. In this case study, we will explore the value of mentoring for the leader and also ultimately the organization. As a strategic advisor and mentor to the FTSE 100 leaders in the United Kingdom and the Fortune 500 companies around the world, taking a very conservative figure and even by cutting it in half, I have increased the revenues for my private clients by more than £760 million. But first, understanding one's own impact from the perspective of others may seem intuitive or even insignificant. Yet it is the singular most important learning anyone in a leadership position can gain in a mentoring relationship. I say this reflecting on my learning as the mentor and with my clients' feedback on their learning throughout by us working together. This case is based on the mentoring work with my private client, who we shall call Paul in this case study. While the case example involves banking based in the United Kingdom, the situation, concerns and processes are applicable to just about any industry anywhere in the world. Some background about the client. Paul, an experienced FTSE 100 executive leader in his early 50s, Paul first came to me for mentoring at the recommendation of a team of accountants who were working with his bank. The bank had received a poor rating on their customer retention and satisfaction survey, and whilst the senior managers and the leaders fixed many of the issues identified by the staff, the survey results continued to worsen over the 2-year period. It was difficult for Paul and the leadership team to understand what happened to cause this continuing decline in the customer dissatisfaction and also the customer churn. There was a palpable sense of skepticism amongst Paul and his senior team around the engagement of yet another consultant or mentor, especially an independent one, when the bank normally uses mentors from the likes of Baines & Company, McKinsey & Company in the past. So what's going to be different this time? The traditional problem-solution approach was not working, and Paul and the senior leadership team were ready to try something different. Mentoring fit the different description, though it was evident there was uncertainty and misinformation about what mentoring really involved. During the initial meeting, Paul and I talked about what might be different in this relationship. Paul expressed a readiness for change. I would say Paul was in the contemplation stage, considering making changes but not yet being convinced to do so. The goals for the client. Paul's goal was to improve the level of customer satisfaction and the retention rate within the banking group. He knew intellectually there were actions attributable to him, though looking back he acknowledged not having full awareness around the role he played in the customer retention process. The overall goal for the mentoring did not clearly emerge until about 6 weeks into our work together. The intent expressed was to continue to work to evolve the corporate culture and his leadership style from a command and control to one of commitment and learning for inspired leadership. The challenge facing the bank. Paul was a very successful bank leader, recognized nationally and regionally for his contributions to the banking and financial sector over the years. He led his current organization from a near financial disaster to sustainable profits during the challenging financial and banking environment that we've all seen around the world. Paul's long and successful career allowed him expertise and respect in many facets of the organization. This caused tension initially as Paul considered the challenges, which in addition to the declining number of customers and the dissatisfaction score included the following. 1. Increasingly losing loyal and long-standing customers. 2. gaps in being able to replace business and personal customers. 3. Growing concern about the ability to continue to deliver the expected quality and service the banking customers are expecting. 4. Feedback from branch managers of an overwhelming sense of concern, uncertainty and apathy about the ability to correct the downturn trend. 5. Stories within the leadership and staff ranking of negativity and uncertainty about the future of the bank and the security of the staff's jobs. The mentoring approach. My approach to beginning a mentoring relationship has foundations on holding my client in unconditional positive regard, believing in the client and their worth and their capability even when they do not see it in themselves. This means creating a safe environment that encourages trust, accepting the client for who he or she is, and being without judgment no matter what. Paul and I first met face-to-face in his London office one morning for about 2 hours. We began the relationship with a tentative nature in our dialogue. The introductory conversation was more of a mutual interview, a gathering of information for both of us, which is normal and expected within any FTSE 100 or Fortune 500 company. For Paul, it was to determine if, in fact, he wanted to engage in working with a mentor and especially with me. For me, it was to listen and begin to learn about who this individual man was as a leader of a major banking organization, a husband, a father, a brother, and a human being. Paul had never considered a mentor for himself until this project. We discussed mentoring, what it is and what it is not. Paul wanted to understand what mentoring would mean for him personally and for the bank. The bank normally uses mentors at different levels for development of managers and leaders, but for Paul, this was a first. What was involved? How much time? How could he take the time in an already full schedule? As we talked, I asked if we might begin mentoring now, explaining that it is much easier to understand the mentoring role when you experience the process. Paul was open-minded and willing, so we agreed to engage in the process. I went on to explain to Paul some of the basic fundamentals of mentoring and working with FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 leaders. 1. The confidential nature of the relationship. 2. An equal partnership. 3. The expectations of openness and honesty flowing in both directions. 4. A trusting and safe environment. 5. The importance of direct communication and feedback. 6. Choice and responsibility. Paul and I worked together in a one-on-one mentoring relationship for an initial 3 months. After our on-site meeting, we met by telephone conference calls 4 times a month for 1-hour sessions. During the initial period, Paul requested expanding the mentoring to include meetings with his senior leadership team, both individually and as a group. As we expanded the work to include the team, we decided to use a behavioral and communication style assessment. The assessment provided a simple way to succinctly gather information about the group that gave a common context and voice to their experience. It was a tool that allowed for more in-depth discussions and examinations of how the group related with each other and the larger team. Our work together involved open, honest dialogue that required accountability for one's own actions, including those that were less than desirable. Where there might have been a tendency to defend a mistake or direct blame, Paul and the team learned to accept responsibility, listen to each customer's feedback, and to look for the learning in each case. Measures of success. The impetus for hiring me as a mentor for this assignment was the steadily decreasing customers due to dissatisfaction with the bank and the services they provided. The survey completed 1 year after beginning the project showed an increase in customer retention and satisfaction, with the summary comments from the survey's company stating, "The bank culture is improving in many areas of the customer satisfaction, thus strengthening the commitment of customers per branch. According to the survey company, there was a statistically significant increase in the customer retention and satisfaction score compared with the survey from each of the 2 previous years. All of the customer retention, customer experience and satisfaction measures demonstrated improvements. Those related to the mentoring assessments that had a statistically significant change included the following. 1. Attention to the customer's needs. 2. Communication between management and the counter staff at each bank. 3. More authority to all frontline employees, including call center staff. 4. Leadership organizational. 5. More leadership involvement at every customer touch point. 6. Fairness at every level for customers and the employees of the bank. A survey was done the following year as the organization moved to a more specific instrument with enhanced reporting capabilities to include comparative data for each branch within each region. Paul and the team were very proud to report Net Promoter Scores, the NPS scores, that ranked above the comparative data in each area. The survey company asked what the organization had done to achieve such an increase in satisfaction. While the bank engaged in work other than mentoring to improve their customer retention and satisfaction, I would state that the work that was most significant was related to mentoring and Paul's openness and commitment to the whole process during the learning and the changes that took place. Paul's openness and willingness to engage, listen, reflect, explore, experiment, and to trust me and the process of mentoring made the difference in the results Paul and the bank continues to achieve. Conclusion. The skepticism that surfaced during our initial conversation around mentoring quickly vanished as Paul and his team engaged in the process. We worked together regularly over the course of a year and with even further customer retention in the second year. Paul became actually aware of creating the safe space for open and honest customer feedback, staying out of judgment, and the importance of accountability by the staff to the customers as well as the management and the leaders. His emotional and social intelligence strengthened as evidenced by his growing awareness, respect, engagement and appreciation with others. He created an environment for an ongoing learning amongst the team for the bank and the financial organization that he was employed by. This change was noticed and acknowledged by individuals within and outside the banking organization. I had the opportunity to speak with the senior leaders as part of a 2-part feedback evaluation, which Paul requested during this process. There was noticeable change from one year to the next. One indicator of this change was that the people reported that Paul seemed to be more aware of his behavior, and there was a shift from 1. Telling to listening, 2. Blame, judgment and defensiveness to awareness, flexibility and willingness to explore and engage in conversations, 3. Controlling to acknowledging, and 4. Fear and blame to trust. As I began the work with Paul, I had moments of uncertainty myself. Would Paul achieve what he wanted? Was I the right person to work with him in this process? Was mentoring the right process? These and other questions can come into our consciousness and distract us as we face challenges and uncertainty. Refocus, stay in the present, and be sure to have a mentor or supervisor who will support you in your learning and growth. The work we do as mentors is a contribution that strengthens the foundation of individuals and organizations. It was a pleasure to work with Paul and his banking leadership team. I appreciate Paul and the bank granting me the permission to document our work together, but leaving his personal name and the bank's name out of the case study. To find out more about how to work with me, Mo Nawaz, visit www.monawaz.com.